What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to our weekly Thursday night football breakdown. As you can see the scenery around me, we're in a little bit of a different spot here. But if you are new and you've never been to one of these before, welcome. My name is Max. I do football content every single day to help you with your fantasy teams and your sports bets. So if you're new, make sure you subscribe below and leave a like on the video if you do enjoy it. We're going to be going through the Minnesota Vikings versus Los Angeles Rams Thursday night football matchup. And to be honest with you guys, I did a little pre-research. All the trends point to Rams throwing the ball, Vikings running the ball, and the numbers love it. So we're going to talk about all these players last Thursday night. We went 5 for 5 with this stuff too. So let's dive deep into this information. Now, if you guys don't know how we do this, we look at the statistical information for quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. Some early trends for you guys that I did find last 5 game stuff. Last 5 games, 300 pass yards per game for quarterbacks versus the Minnesota Vikings. 43 plus receiving yards per game for running backs versus the Minnesota Vikings. 222 receiving yards per game for wide receivers versus the Minnesota Vikings, easily the highest, and 18.25 receptions per game for wide receivers versus the Minnesota Vikings. The other side, 100 plus rush yards per game for running backs versus the Rams. Listen to this. I love this. 32 rush attempts per game for running backs versus the Los Angeles Rams. Tight ends, 68.75, 69 yards per game. Nice, I know. Versus the Los Angeles Rams. Then the target rate, the only outlier for both of these teams, to be honest with you, was out wide for the Los Angeles Rams. This is overall, not last 5, but overall 45% out wide target rate. So teams try to attack the Los Angeles Rams out wide. It hasn't been wildly successful, oddly enough, but they try to attack the Los Angeles Rams out wide. So let's look at some passing data here. We talked about it. 300 plus pass yards per game, last 5 average for quarterbacks versus the Minnesota Vikings. And you can see the numbers here, that number 3 spot right above my head. Minnesota Vikings allowing 287.5 pass yards per game. Now, you can look at the Los Angeles Rams pass catchers if you really want. Puka just got activated from IR. We wait to see about that. We wait to see about Cooper Kupp's health. But if I'm going to lean anything there, it's going to be Matt Stafford pass yards, especially in a game where, again, I think the Vikings are going to be able to control it, win on the ground, control the line of scrimmage, and honestly just dominate this football game. So I look at that. I think Matt Stafford, fantasy-wise, it's a decent start. I looked at the red zone defenses. They're both middle of the pack. Rams' red zone offense, not great. Minnesota's red zone offense is very good. That's why we're staying away from the kickers this week, even though I love my kicker picks. So you look at that. It's not great. I don't absolutely love it. And then you look at yards per game overall. The Los Angeles Rams are 12th, 227 pass yards per game. You know, maybe there's some explosive plays for Justin Jefferson for this Vikings offense. If TJ Hawkinson plays, it'll really be the first time they're at full strength, at least in terms of pass catchers. But again, I think this is going to be a game where Vikings control it on the ground. Rams have to catch up. I'm not loving the Vikings pass catchers outside of TJ Hawkinson, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But in terms of pass yards, quarterback play, I do like Matt Stafford. I like Matt Stafford's yards. Again, if you guys are waiting for my actual picks, they will be going out Thursday morning on all of the socials as well. There'll be a link below to follow that so you don't miss any of that stuff. But Matt Stafford pass yards is an early lean there. Let's talk rush data, though, because this is where I find it really, really interesting, especially as you relate to the Los Angeles Rams. So last 5, again, for the Los Angeles Rams, 32 rush attempts per game. 32 rush attempts per game last 6, and then 100 rush yards per game last 5 average for running backs against the Rams. So you look at that, and again, you see the 7 games for all these teams, and then the Los Angeles Rams at 6. You divide that, it's 32 rush attempts per game. It'll put them right about the 5 spot in this list. So basically the 5th most rush attempts per game in the NFL this year. Teams want to run the ball against Los Angeles Rams. Teams feel like they can run the ball against the Los Angeles Rams. And as I look at game logs with Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler, I actually like both of their rushing attempts, to be honest with you. I think this game could get out of hand. I think it could get to a point where Ty Chandler has an impact in this game on the ground as well. Rush attempts, I will probably be on above anything else, but we, again, wait till Thursday morning for those picks. You look at rush yards per game overall, the Los Angeles Rams are allowing the 3rd most rush yards per game overall. Yards per carry, the Los Angeles Rams are allowing the 8th most yards per carry. The team can't stop the run, especially recently. I love Aaron Jones. I love Ty Chandler. That's about it for the Minnesota offense. Again, we'll talk about TJ Hawkinson a little bit later. And then as you look at the Vikings defense, Rush yards per game, second fewest in the NFL. Rush yards per carry, fifth fewest in the NFL. Rush attempts overall, at least right now, through 6 games. Of course, it's different with the Ravens too. Fewest in the NFL. So Kyren Williams, unless the Rams are in a spot where they're blowing the Vikings out, and I don't know, you guys tell me, I don't see a world where that happens this week. Kyren Williams probably going to be moderately limited in not only his production, but his attempts on the ground. So staying away from Kyren Williams overall. Obviously, if you're in fantasy, you're going to start Kyren Williams. I love Aaron Jones this week. Aaron Jones is a great start. And then if you're in a really deep league, you need somebody. There are no buys in the NFL this week. It's important to know that. I don't mind Ty Chandler. I really don't. But I like his rush attempts and rush yards more than anything. Let's talk passing. Let's talk target share. You guys love that stuff too. And again, if you guys are enjoying the video and you haven't left a like already, make sure you do. Helps me out a ton. Again, if you're new and you're not subscribed, make sure you do. Let's talk target share. Now, again, I told you guys at the beginning of the video, there really isn't anything to write home about in terms of target rates with these teams. Like, you've been targeting the Rams out wide at a 45% clip, which is pretty high, but not a ton of success, especially in the wide receiver department. So we can look at wide target percentage. Again, the Los Angeles Rams, 4th highest in the NFL. This is overall. And the Minnesota Vikings are decently high, but there's really actually, they're 18th, excuse me, they're not even that high. You look at the Vikings splits here, 40% out wide, 32% in the slot. Like, that's not a big enough difference for me to think, oh, like, you know, if Cooper Kupp plays, he's going to get all these slot targets. And if Cooper Kupp plays, he's going to get targets. But that's not enough for me to be convinced to lean a certain way. And then you look at the slot target on the other side. The Los Angeles Rams are – where are they at? Dead last. There you go. I knew they're towards the bottom. Dead last in the NFL. So you don't throw to the slot against Los Angeles Rams. We'll look at the slot routes from the Minnesota Vikings very shortly, but you don't throw against slot against the Los Angeles Rams. Inline target rate. You have nobody in the top 10 here. You have the Rams at 13th at 11.5%, and then you have the Minnesota Vikings at 21 at 10.2%. But interesting to note again, TJ Hawkinson potentially back this week, depending on when you guys are watching this. There may be other news says he is or is not playing, but potentially back this week. Last 5 games, not a ton of receptions allowed to tight ends, but 69 yards per game for opposing tight ends against the Los Angeles Rams. What that tells me, longest reception, leaning yards before catches every time, but longest reception for TJ Hawkinson. So that's another thing you could be on. If you're starting, TJ Hawkinson to fantasy this week, and there's no buys this week, so I almost hope you don't. I'm not confidently starting him, but when I look at the picks and predictions for this week, longest reception, yards, both maybe, because I think TJ Hawkinson could be projected, I haven't looked yet, at 20, 27, 28 yards in his first game back, not playing full snaps, which is understandable. Could happen in one play, guys. It really could happen in one play. I don't think there's going to be a ton of volume for Hawkinson, especially if the Vikings are going to be winning this game. They're going to run the ball a little bit more. That's where I'm leaning for Hawkinson. But I don't know. I think longest catch for TJ Hawkinson is a very, very interesting thing. And again, if you didn't hear me say it twice already, official picks, official predictions will be out Thursday morning. So make sure you guys follow the socials and check that out. Now let's keep talking target rate. Back target rate, another very interesting one because Los Angeles Rams 7th highest in the NFL at 17.9%. And then you look at the Minnesota Vikings, 13th highest at 17%. The Vikings are going to force a lot of checkdowns. And Matt Stafford is good against the blitz, but he's not afraid to take his shots against the blitz too. So Brian Flores going to throw a lot of stuff at Matt Stafford. What does he do? Unpredictable. Rams pass offense right now, unpredictable. Like, you don't know the health of Cooper Kupp. You don't know how much he's going to play if he plays. You don't know if Puka Nacua is playing. He got activated, I think, yesterday. There's a lot of very, very interesting aspects to this Rams pass offense that I'm just kind of staying away from. Like, if where I'm going to be on the Rams is Matt Stafford and Matt Stafford's pass yards or pass attempts, maybe. We'll do a little more research on that very shortly. But that's where I'm looking before anything else. Now, in terms of first read percentage, again, nothing super crazy to write home about. Nobody in the top 10. Rams are at 14. Minnesota Vikings are at 18. In terms of screen percentage, where's that? There we go. Screen percentage. Again, nobody in the top 10. Yep, nobody in the top 10. Rams at 13. Vikings at 27. So nobody's getting screened. Like, I don't know. I'm not really leaning too much into either pass offense. I think Matt Stafford's yards is where I'm going to lean in the Rams offense. But let's check out some passing attempts too, because that is very important to look at, especially as it relates to a blowout. Like pass attempts, Minnesota Vikings again. They, in terms of per game, 255 over 6 will be more than 267 over 7. So the Minnesota Vikings are allowing the most pass attempts per game in the entire NFL right now. So if I'm looking at Matt Stafford, pass attempts, that's kind of where I'm looking. The completion percentage for the Vikings towards the bottom. Yeah, 23rd, so I'm not really looking there. Again, pass yards per game, we talked about third most in the NFL. So if you are like me and you're not as comfortable with Matt Stafford in terms of completions to backup receivers, if Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are both out, Matt Stafford pass attempts is where you would lead. Now, if you're comfortable with Tutu Atwell, Jordan Whittington, all those guys who are running routes for Matt Stafford while Kupp and Nacua have been out, like, I don't mind you taking the pass yards, but pass attempts is where I would lean before pass yards, especially with the state of the Los Angeles Rams offense going into a short week on Thursday. Like, I doubt Puka plays. Cooper Kupp's another thing, but I doubt Puka plays. I don't really think I'm going to lean too heavily into it. And then we can go back into the rushing data just to check out if there's any lean for where the Rams are worse at in terms of schematics. So we talked about it. The Rams are just generally speaking not great against the run, haven't been great against the run. We can look at zone man splits, though. In terms of zone yards per carry, the Los Angeles Rams are 11th at 4.57. They're facing less zone, 75 attempts versus their 93 in man. And then man gap, I think they're probably better, right? Yeah, so they're a little bit better in terms of man gap runs, especially as it relates to other players. Now, rushing success rate, which, by the way, actually, one of my friends mentioned this to me a couple days ago. Rushing success rate, for anybody of you guys who don't know, where's overall success rate? We'll just go by scheme. So rushing success rate, for those of you guys who don't know, I'll take off the screen for a second. Rushing success rate is essentially how well you stay ahead of the chains, how well you manage your down. So if you get 4+ yards on first down, that's a successful run. If you don't, that's not a successful run. Second down, I believe it's half or more of what you have left to gain. So if it's 2nd and 6 and you get a 4-yard run, that would be a successful run. But if it's 2nd and 6 and you get a 2-yard run, that is not a successful run. And then 3rd and 4th down is just converting. That is what rushing success rate is. So it's important in the sense that it matters to how well you stay ahead of the chains, how well your offense moves. So in terms of overall success rate, I mean, the Rams, again, 12th in zone, 6th in man gap. So let's look at the Vikings offense where they run most of their attempts. If there's one way they lean over the other, the Kevin O'Connell offense in terms of zone attempts, or let's do attempt percentage because we're in the middle of the season here. Minnesota Vikings are 13th in the NFL. They're running more zone than man, and then man, actually, they're probably lower than 13th in the NFL. Yeah, 21st in the NFL in terms of man gap. So again, there's no real lean for us here, but we'll conclude with what we have learned and everything we've talked about so far. So game flow should lean into what the numbers say outside of, the Rams not being favored, the Vikings playing good football. Game flow should lean into what the numbers say. So 300+ pass yards per game for quarterbacks against the Minnesota Vikings in the last 5 games. And overall, Minnesota is allowing the most pass attempts per game. So for predictions, Matt Stafford. I love his pass attempts and I love his pass yards. Now, if you want to pick one of the two, right now, we'll post everything Thursday morning. Right now, I will lean pass attempts because we don't know about Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. If you're comfortable with Stafford throwing to backup receivers, I feel more comfortable with yards. But if you're not, you think the Rams are going to get blown out, Matt Stafford pass attempts in terms of pass catchers, rushing, like I'm not even thinking about it. Maybe Kyron Williams receptions because, again, the Vikings are allowing 43+ receiving yards per game the last 5 games, 2 opposing running backs. So, again, you don't really need to lean there too much, but if it's going to be a blowout, he's going to check the ball down. So Matt Stafford passing yards, passing attempts, and maybe we look at Kyron. Now, what stinks is the Vikings are allowing a ton of yards to wide receivers. So you can look at the wide receivers. Again, Thursday, this is a Thursday problem, to be honest with you, with pass catchers against the Minnesota Vikings. So you don't know about Cooper Kupp. You don't know about Puka Nacua. So we stay away from that. But on the other side, the Minnesota Vikings, again, 32 rush attempts per game for running backs against the Rams, 100+ rush yards per game for running backs against the Rams. Now, I love Aaron Jones in that sense, but here's the thing. I think it could get to a point where Ty Chandler comes in and has an impact on the game. If that's the case, I'm leaning both of their rush yards probably. I would say rush attempts before rush yards, just generally speaking. But on the off chance it's a blowout, guys, like Aaron Jones could have 12 carries. I don't know what his projection's at right now, but 12 carries. They could be up 28-0 in the third quarter, and they could stop using him because he's hurt. So I would say yards. Chances are if he's in the situation where they're up 28-0, he's running the ball effectively anyway. So yards before attempts, but they do allow a lot of rushing attempts. And then tight ends, 69 yards per game allowed. Nice. 2 opposing tight ends last 5 games. So TJ Hawkinson, questionable. We don't know what his deal is, but if he plays, I like yards, but longest reception because I think it could come in one play, a chunk play, because they're not giving up a ton of catches to tight ends, is where I would lean before yards. So right now, tentatively, and again, this changes Thursday morning, Matt Stafford, I'm going to go pass attempts. Probably Kyron Williams receptions. I'll take my chance there. And then Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler yards. And I'm going to go TJ Hawkinson longest reception. So those are the 5 I have right now. Again, could change Thursday morning. Make sure you guys are following the socials below at Loeb's Leads, LOEBS, If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a thumbs up below. Comment which predictions you will be on, and I will see you guys next time. God bless.